I'm Scarlett, 38 female. I live in a quiet suburb with my husband, Liam, and our two wonderful children, Noah and Lily. I work in human resources, a job that's all about people, policies, and creating fair environments, which is ironic given what I've had to deal with in my own family. My life was, by all accounts, very normal and happy until my mother-in-law systematically tried to break my children's spirits. This is the story of how a Thanksgiving dinner became the final straw, and how I chose to protect my children's hearts over maintaining a toxic family peace. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. For the longest time, my relationship with my mother-in-law, Beatrice, was like walking on a perfectly polished floor that you know has a layer of grease on it. It looks fine, even beautiful from a distance. But one wrong step and you're on your back, wondering what just happened. Beatrice was a retired art history professor, a woman who carried herself with an air of intellectual and cultural superiority that made every conversation feel like a gentle, condescending lecture. She wasn't overtly cruel in the beginning. Instead, she specialized in a brand of passive aggression so subtle it was almost artistic. Her weapon of choice was comparison, and her preferred targets were my children, Noah and Lily. It started small, as these things often do. When my son Noah was 5, he came home from kindergarten bursting with pride over a finger painting he'd made, a chaotic, beautiful mess of primary colors he called Dinosaur Sunset. We hung it on the fridge, a shrine to his budding creativity. That weekend, Beatrice came over for a visit. She glanced at the painting, her lips pursed into a thin, unsmiling line. "Oh, that's vibrant," she commented, her tone dismissive. Later that evening, she pulled out her phone to show us a picture of a pencil sketch done by her other grandson, Chloe's son, Mason. It was a technically precise, if soulless, drawing of a house. "Look at this," Beatrice cooed. "Mason is only 6, and he already has such a grasp of perspective. He gets his artistic eye from me, of course." I squeezed my husband Liam's hand, a silent signal. He just smiled weakly, accustomed to his mother's high standards. "Mom, Noah's only 5. It's just for fun," he said lightly. But I saw the flicker of confusion on Noah's face. He had been so proud, and in one swift, elegantly delivered comment, his grandmother had reduced his masterpiece to a meaningless splash of color. This became the pattern. Every achievement of Noah or Lily's was met with a story about how Chloe's children, Mason and his younger sister, Olivia, had done something similar, but better, earlier, or with more natural talent. Chloe, my sister-in-law, was a lifestyle influencer, a career that seemed to consist of posting aesthetically flawless photos of her perfect life. Her home was immaculate white and beige, and her children were often props in her curated online reality, dressed in matching linen outfits and smiling serenely. Beatrice adored it. She saw Chloe's life as a reflection of her own refined tastes, a testament to her superior parenting. Chloe, in turn, basked in her mother's approval, and the two of them formed a mutual admiration society that left little room for anyone else. They spoke in a shorthand of shared glances and inside jokes, often at family gatherings, making Liam and me feel like outsiders in our own family. Liam, an architect, was a man who saw the world in structures and systems. He believed in logic and reason, and for a long time, he tried to apply that logic to his mother's behavior. "She doesn't mean it that way, Scarlett," he'd say after another one of Beatrice's backhanded compliments. "She's from a different generation. It's just how she talks." He saw her actions as individual, unconnected events, not as a systematic campaign to establish a clear hierarchy among her grandchildren. He loved his mother and wanted to believe the best of her, a blind spot I understood, even as it frustrated me. The cracks in the facade began to widen into undeniable fissures over the years. Birthdays were a particularly telling battlefield. For Mason and Olivia's birthdays, Beatrice would spend weeks searching for the perfect, extravagant gift, a rare edition book, an expensive art kit, a trip to a special exhibit. For Noah and Lily, she'd usually hand them a crisp $20 bill inside a generic card, often forgetting what their latest interests were. "I just don't know what children like these days," she'd sigh, as if my kids were an exotic, unknowable species, despite seeing them regularly. Last Christmas, the disparity was so stark it was almost comical. Chloe's kids unwrapped a state-of-the-art telescope, which Beatrice presented. Ted with a grand speech about nurturing their curiosity for the cosmos. My children received matching beige sweaters. They were nice sweaters, but when Lily, who was 7 at the time and adored anything that sparkled, held up the plain garment, her face fell. "Thank you, Grandma," she said, her voice small. Later, I found her in her room, trying to stick glittery unicorn stickers onto the sleeve. "I'm making it pretty, Mommy," she'd whispered, and my heart broke. I tried to talk to Liam about it more directly. "It's not about the money, Liam," I explained one night after another draining family dinner. "It's the thoughtlessness. It's the message she's sending. She is actively showing our children that they are less important to her." Liam ran a hand through his hair, his brow furrowed. "I know it looks bad, Scarlett, but what do you want me to do? Confront her? She'll just deny it and call you overly sensitive. You know how she is. She'll twist it and somehow make us the villains for questioning her generosity." He was right. Beatrice was a master manipulator. Any attempt to address an issue with her would be met with a performance of wounded fragility. She would cry, accuse us of being ungrateful, and somehow, by the end of the conversation, we would be the ones apologizing. It was exhausting. So, for a long time, I tried to compensate. I made sure our home was a fortress of love and acceptance. I praised Noah's inventive Lego creations and Lily's wonderfully imaginative stories. I told them, again and again, how smart, kind, and special they were, hoping my voice would be louder than their grandmother's subtle dismissals. But I knew it wasn't a sustainable solution. I was essentially putting emotional bandages on wounds that were being inflicted by someone who was supposed to be a source of love. The poison was still getting in. The lead up to the Thanksgiving that would change everything was filled with the usual anxieties. Beatrice insisted on hosting every year. It was her command performance, a day to showcase her perfect home, her gourmet cooking, and her perfect family, with Chloe and her children in the starring roles. The year before, she'd made a passive-aggressive comment about Lily being a picky eater because she didn't want a second helping of Beatrice's unctuous, wine-soaked mushrooms, while praising Olivia for having a sophisticated palate. Every holiday was a minefield, and I was growing tired of navigating it. This year, however, I felt a different kind of dread. A premonition that the small cracks were about to splinter, and the whole facade was about to come crashing down. The air in Beatrice's house always felt different, still and heavy, like in a museum. It was beautiful, of course. Every piece of furniture was an antique, every painting was an original, and there wasn't a speck of dust to be found. But it wasn't a home, it was a showroom. And on that Thanksgiving, the showroom was staged for its biggest event of the year. The scent of roasting turkey and rosemary hung in the air, a deceptively warm and inviting aroma that masked the cold tension underneath. We were the last to arrive, held up because Lily couldn't find her favorite sparkly shoes, the ones she insisted on wearing for special occasions. When we walked in, the scene was already perfectly set. Chloe was laughing delicately at something her husband said, holding a glass of champagne. Her children, Mason and Olivia, were sitting on a plush velvet sofa, quietly looking at an art book with their grandmother. They were dressed in coordinating outfits of navy blue and forest green, looking like they'd stepped out of a catalog. My children, Noah and Lily, walked in behind me, suddenly shy. Noah clutched his Nintendo Switch to his chest like a shield, and Lily hid behind my legs. Beatrice looked up, and her smile, which had been so brilliant for Chloe's family, tightened almost imperceptibly. "Oh, you're here," she said, her voice a little cooler than before. We were about to start the appetizers. The first hour was a masterclass in Beatrice's particular brand of favoritism. She fawned over Mason's recent school project on the Roman aqueducts, calling him a budding historian. She praised Olivia's poise and grace. Meanwhile, when Noah tried to show her a new game he had coded on his tablet, a project he had spent weeks on, Beatrice waved a dismissive hand. Noah, darling, not now. We're having a civilized conversation. We don't have screens out before dinner. Minutes later, she was eagerly watching a video on Chloe's phone of Olivia's ballet recital. The hypocrisy was so blatant it was breathtaking. Liam, ever the peacemaker, tried to steer the conversation. Mom, Noah's project is actually really impressive. He's learning Python scripting. Beatrice just gave a tight, thin smile. That's nice, dear, she said, before turning back to Chloe. Now, as I was saying about the degas exhibit, I felt my jaw see. Lunch, I found my children, who had retreated to a corner of the vast living room. Noah was now playing on his Switch with the volume off, a defiant look on his face. Lily was running her fingers along the brocade pattern of an armchair, looking lost. I knelt down beside them. Hey, you two, you okay? Lily nodded, but her eyes were sad. Grandma didn't like my shoes, she whispered, pointing to her sparkly flats. She said they were gaudy. The word sounded clumsy coming from her small mouth. She meant gaudy, a word her grandmother had no doubt used. I felt a hot flash of anger. Well, I think they're the most beautiful shoes in the whole world, I said, forcing a bright smile. And you have the best taste. She gave me a weak smile, but the damage was done. Another little chip in her self-esteem, courtesy of her grandmother. As dinner time approached, Beatrice made her grand announcement. All right, everyone, it's time to be seated. The turkey is resting beautifully. We all started to move towards the dining room, where a long, magnificent table was set with her best china and silver. It looked like something out of a magazine. But as we approached, Beatrice held up a hand, stopping us. Now, just a little change in plans this year, she said with a breezy, cheerful tone that sent a chill down my spine. I've decided to set up a little children's table. It will be so much more fun for them. My eyes immediately scanned the dining room. There was no other table. Then I followed her gaze to a small, rickety-looking card table tucked away in the adjoining sunroom, almost out of sight. It was covered with a thin paper cloth and had paper plates and plastic cutlery. Chloe smiled. Oh, Mother, what a quaint idea. I stood there, frozen, as Beatrice started to direct the children. Mason, Olivia, you can sit right here at the main table with the adults. You're old enough to participate in proper dinner conversation. Mason was 12 and Olivia was 9. My son, Noah, was 11. What about Noah? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. He's only a year younger than Mason. Beatrice gave me a look of feigned surprise. Oh, but Noah and Lily are so inseparable. I thought they'd have more fun together, away from all the boring adult talk. She turned and smiled sweetly at my children. You too can have your own special dinner in the sunroom. It'll be like a picnic. The blood drained from my face. It wasn't a children's table. It was a table for my children. She was segregating them, forcing them to eat alone on paper plates while their cousins were celebrated at the main table. Noah looked utterly humiliated. His face was red and he stared at the floor, refusing to look at anyone. Lily's bottom lip began to tremble. But I want to sit with you, Mommy, she whispered, her voice cracking. This was it. This was the unforgivable line. All the little slights, the backhanded compliments, the unequal gifts, they were death by 1,000 cuts. But this was a public shaming. A deliberate, cruel act designed to put my children in their place. No, I said. The word came out quiet but hard as steel. Every head turned towards me. No, they will not be eating at a separate table. Beatrice's smile vanished, replaced by a mask of cold indignation. Scarlett, please don't make a scene. It's just for fun. Fun, I repeated, my voice rising. Does this look fun to you, Beatrice? Separating them from their family? Making them eat on paper plates while their cousins sit at the big table? What message do you think that sends them? Chloe chimed in, her voice dripping with false concern. Scarlett, you're overreacting. Mom just thought it would be cozy for them. I looked at Liam. He was standing there, his face pale, looking from his mother to his wife, a deer in the headlights. In that moment, I knew I was on my own. I knelt down in front of my children. Noah, Lily, look at me. They slowly lifted their heads, their eyes filled with confusion and hurt. We are not staying here, I said softly, but with absolute conviction. We're going to go home. We're going to have our own Thanksgiving, just the four of us. Lily's face crumpled, and she threw her arms around my neck, sobbing. Noah just nodded, his eyes shining with unshed tears of gratitude. I stood up, holding Lily in my arms and taking Noah's hand. I looked directly at Beatrice, my gaze unwavering. You have made it perfectly clear how you feel about my children, I said, my voice shaking with rage. And I will not subject them to this cruelty for one more second. We are leaving. I turned and walked towards the door, not waiting for Liam. I could hear Beatrice's sputtering protests behind me, Chloe's sharp intake of breath. But I didn't care. The only thing that mattered was the weight of my daughter in my arms and the feel of my son's hand in mine. As I pushed open the front door and stepped into the cold November air, I felt a strange sense of relief. The floor had finally given way, the facade had shattered, and though we were falling, at least we were falling together. The car ride home was shrouded in a heavy, suffocating silence. I drove, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, my eyes fixed on the road ahead. I was so consumed by a white-hot fury that I was afraid if I spoke, only screams would come out. In the rearview mirror, I could see my children. Lily had cried herself into a state of drowsy exhaustion in her car seat, her tear-stained face puffy and pale. Her sparkly shoes, the source of her grandmother's earlier scorn, were scuffed and sad-looking. Noah sat rigidly beside her, staring out the window at the passing houses, his jaw set in a hard line that was far too old for his 11-year-old face. He hadn't shed a tear, but his silence was louder than any sob. It was the silence of deep, searing humiliation. Liam had followed us out of the house a few minutes after I left, getting into the passenger seat without a word. He hadn't tried to stop me, hadn't tried to reason with me. He had just watched me gather our children and walk out, his face a canvas of conflict and shock. Now, he sat beside me, the space between us feeling like a vast, empty canyon. He kept opening his mouth as if to say something, then closing it again, unable to find the words. The silence stretched on, thick with unspoken accusations and years of suppressed resentment. Finally, about halfway home, Noah's quiet voice broke the tension. She hates us. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, delivered with a chilling finality. Liam flinched as if he'd been struck. He turned in his seat to look at our son. Noah, no, that's not, Grandma doesn't hate you. She's just complicated. Noah finally turned from the window, and his eyes, so much like his father's, were blazing with a pain that ripped my heart to shreds. Complicated? Dad, she put us at a card table in another room, with paper plates. Did you see the plates Mason and Olivia got? They were real plates, with gold stuff on them. She wanted everyone to see that we're not as good as them. My own eyes filled with tears, blurring the taillights of the cars in front of me. He understood. He understood the symbolism, the public nature of the humiliation, the deliberate cruelty of it all. Beatrice hadn't just separated them, she had branded them as inferior. She called Lily's shoes gaudy, Noah continued, his voice cracking with a protective anger for his sister. Lily loved those shoes. She made her feel stupid for liking something. Why does she always do that? Why is everything we do and like not good enough for her? Liam had no answer. He just stared at his son, the carefully constructed walls of denial he had built around his mother's behavior crumbling to dust around him. He was finally seeing it, not through the filter of a son who wanted to keep the peace, but through the wounded eyes of his own child. He was seeing the cumulative effect of 1,000 little cuts and the deep, gaping wound they had left behind. I'm never going back there, Noah said, his voice low and firm. Ever. That was when I finally spoke. I pulled the car over to the side of the road, into the empty parking lot of a closed-down diner, and put it in park. I turned off the engine, and the sudden quiet was absolute. I turned to face my husband, the fury I'd been suppressing finally boiling over. Did you hear him, Liam? I asked, my voice trembling. Did you hear what your mother did to our son? To our daughter? This isn't a misunderstanding. This isn't her being from a different generation. This was a calculated act of emotional abuse. She looked our children in the face and told them they were second class, that they were not worthy of a seat at her table. Liam looked utterly broken. Scarlett, I didn't know what to do. I froze. I saw the table and I couldn't believe it. It was monstrous. Monstrous? Yes, it was monstrous, I shot back, the words tumbling out. And while you were freezing, I was watching our children's hearts break. I was watching Lily's face crumple when she realized she couldn't sit with her own parents. I was watching Noah try to shrink into himself to disappear. While you were worried about making a scene, your mother was making one. She created a spectacle to deliberately humiliate our family. I took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to regain control. This is it, Liam. This is the end of the line. I have spent years trying to protect them from her. I have plastered on a fake smile through every backhanded compliment, every unfair comparison, every thoughtless gift. I have swallowed my anger to keep the peace for your sake, but I am done. I am done letting that woman use my children as props in her twisted family drama. I am done letting her teach them that they are worth less than anyone else. My only job as a parent, our only job, is to protect them. And today, we failed. We didn't fail, Liam said, his voice thick with emotion. You didn't fail. You saved them. You got them out of there. I'm the one who failed. I failed you and I failed them. For years, you've been telling me, showing me, and I made excuses. I didn't want to see it. It was easier to believe you were being sensitive than to believe my own mother was capable of being so cruel, so intentionally cruel. He reached out and took my hand. His was trembling. When Noah said she hates us, that's what broke me, because he's not wrong. It's not hate, maybe, but it's a complete and utter lack of love, and I've let her get away with it. I've been letting her poison my own family to avoid confronting her. I am so sorry, Scarlett. Tears were streaming down my face now, hot tears of anger, frustration, and a sliver of relief. He finally saw it. He finally understood. We were no longer on opposite sides of this canyon between us. He had just jumped across to my side. From the back seat, Lily, who we thought was asleep, spoke up in a tiny, sleepy voice. Mommy, can we get pizza for Thanksgiving dinner? I laughed, a wet, choked sound. I turned around and smiled at her. Yes, baby, we can get the biggest pizza you've ever seen, with extra cheese, and we'll eat it on the couch in our pajamas, and it will be the best Thanksgiving dinner ever. Noah managed a small, watery smile. For the first time since we left that house, a tiny bit of the tension eased in his shoulders. I started the car again, my resolve hardening into something solid and unbreakable inside me. This wasn't just an outburst. It wasn't a temporary storm that would blow over. Beatrice hadn't just crossed a line, she had burned the entire bridge. And I was going to make sure we never, ever tried to cross it again. We were going to build our own path, starting tonight with pizza and pajamas. The days after what we started calling the Thanksgiving that wasn't were strangely quiet. My phone, which should have been blowing up with calls and texts from Beatrice and Chloe, remained silent. It was an unnerving, calculated silence. They were giving us the cold shoulder, assuming we would eventually crack under the pressure of their disapproval and come crawling back with an apology. They had orchestrated the narrative so many times before. We overreacted, we were ungrateful, we owed them an apology. They were waiting for the familiar script to play out. They had no idea that we were busy rewriting the entire play. Our house, in contrast, was filled with a different kind of quiet. It was a gentle, healing quiet. We had indeed gotten pizza that Thanksgiving night. We laid a blanket on the living room floor, watched movies, and built a massive fort out of pillows and blankets. For the first time in a long time, there was no pressure, no performance, no walking on eggshells. We were just us. Seeing Noah laugh at a stupid joke in the movie and watching Lily fall asleep with a happy, pizza sauce-stained smile on her face felt more like gratitude and family than any of Beatrice's stiff, formal dinners ever had. This newfound peace was the foundation upon which Liam and I built our new alliance. The shock of that day had shattered his lifelong habit of defending his mother. He was seeing her and his entire family dynamic with painful, newfound clarity. We talked for hours every night after the kids were in bed, piecing together the long history of Beatrice's manipulative behavior. It was like an archaeological dig into our own past. "I remember when you were applying for that promotion at your old firm," Liam said one evening, his eyes distant with the memory. "Mom told you that you were probably too sensitive for a leadership role. I thought she was just being old-fashioned, but now I realize she was actively trying to undermine your confidence." I nodded, remembering the incident vividly. "And do you remember when Noah wanted to try out for the school play, and she told him he didn't have the stage presence that Mason did? Noah refused to audition after that. He was 7. Liam winced. I'd forgotten about that. My God, it was never just one thing, was it? It was a pattern, a constant, low-level campaign to keep us in our place. We talked about Chloe's role in it all, her passive complicity, her eagerness to be the favored child, and how she benefited from the arrangement. She was never the one to deliver the cruelest blows, but she was always there, ready to back up her mother, to frame us as the difficult ones. She was the pristine, smiling face next to the throne, endorsing the queen's every decree. These conversations were difficult and painful, but they were also incredibly liberating. For the first time, Liam wasn't just hearing my complaints, he was adding his own. He was validating years of my frustration and hurt. We were a team, united against a common source of toxicity. He expressed a profound sense of guilt for not seeing it soon. For not protecting us better. "I don't blame you, Liam," I told him, and I meant it. "You were raised in it. It's hard to see the frame when you're inside the picture, but we see it now, both of us, and that's all that matters." Our plan wasn't about revenge in the dramatic, explosive sense. We didn't want to engage in a war of words or a public feud. That would be playing their game by their rules. Our plan was quieter, more profound. It was a strategic withdrawal, a complete and total amputation of the toxic limb from our family body. We decided on a policy of no contact. It wasn't a punishment we were inflicting, but a boundary we were erecting to protect our own peace and our children's well-being. We agreed that the silence from their end was a temporary tactic. The real test would come as Christmas approached. Christmas was Beatrice's Super Bowl, an even grander affair than Thanksgiving. She would expect us to show up, sheepish and apologetic, ready to resume our designated roles. We had to be prepared for the onslaught of guilt trips, fake apologies, and emotional manipulation that was sure to come. "She's going to call," Liam predicted. "Sometime in early December, she'll act like nothing happened. She'll ask what the kids want for Christmas." "And what are we going to do?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "We're going to be a united front," he said, his voice firm. "You and me will have a clear, concise message, and we will deliver it together. No wavering, no apologies, just a simple statement of our new reality." We spent an evening drafting what we would say. We decided an email would be best. It would prevent Beatrice from twisting our words in a phone call or crying to manipulate us. It was a clear, unassailable document. We wrote it together, tweaking every word until it was perfect. It was polite but firm, leaving no room for negotiation. The process of forming this alliance was transformative for our marriage. The resentment I'd harbored for so long, the feeling of being a lone warrior fighting a battle my husband refused to see, melted away. It was replaced by a deep, profound respect for the man who was now standing shoulder to shoulder with me, ready to protect our family. He saw how his inaction had hurt us, and he was determined to spend the rest of his life making it right. The children, too, seemed to sense the shift in our home. The ambient anxiety that always hummed beneath the surface before a family gathering was gone. They were more relaxed, more open. Noah started showing us his coding projects again, his enthusiasm renewed. Lily wore her sparkliest, most gaudy outfits with pride, knowing she would only receive compliments from her parents. We were creating our own bubble, a safe harbor where they were celebrated for exactly who they were. One afternoon, Noah came to me while I was reading in the living room. "Mom," he said, "are we going to Grandma's for Christmas?" I put my book down and looked at him. "No, buddy, we're not," I said gently. "We're going to have our own Christmas here at home, just the 4 of us. We're going to start our own traditions." He looked at me for a long moment, his expression serious. Then, a slow, wide smile spread across his face. "Good," he said simply, and went back to his room. That one word, good, was all the confirmation I needed. We were doing the right thing. Our quiet alliance wasn't just between me and Liam. It was an alliance of our entire little family of 4, against a world that had tried to tell them they weren't enough. The first week of December arrived, and just as Liam had predicted, the silence from his family broke. It wasn't a phone call, however. It was a text message to Liam from his sister, Chloe. It was a photo of a beautifully decorated Christmas tree, all silver and gold, in Beatrice's living room. The caption read, "Getting festive, Mom is already planning the Christmas Eve menu. She's making your favorite prime rib. The kids can't wait to see Noah and Lily." Roman 20. It was a classic maneuver, bright, cheerful, and completely ignoring the Thanksgiving catastrophe. It was a summons disguised as a friendly text, a declaration that the conflict was over because they had decided it was. They were extending a final invitation back into their world, on their terms, with the unspoken expectation that we would accept gratefully. Liam showed me the phone, his expression grim. "It's starting," he said. "She didn't even mention what happened," I said, marveling at the audacity. "They're just going to pretend it was a collective hallucination." "That's their strategy," Liam replied. "Deny, ignore, and proceed as if they are the benevolent matriarchs of a happy family. It's worked for them for 40 years. "Well," I said, taking a deep breath, "their streak is about to end." This was the moment we had prepared for. It was time to send the email. We sat down at the kitchen table, the laptop pen between us. We reread the draft we had written one last time. It wasn't angry or accusatory. It was a simple, sad statement of fact and a declaration of our future intentions. It was addressed to Beatrice, with Chloe copied on the email. Subject regarding the holidays. "Dear Beatrice, thank you for the invitation to Christmas Eve, which we received via Chloe. We are writing to let you know that we will not be attending. In fact, our family, Liam, Scarlett, Noah, and Lily, will not be attending any future family gatherings for the foreseeable future. The incident at Thanksgiving was not a misunderstanding. It was the culmination of a long pattern of behavior that has been deeply hurtful to our children and to us as a family. The decision to deliberately separate Noah and Lily and subject them to such a clear and public display of favoritism was unacceptable. It was the final confirmation that our family's well-being is not a priority in your home. Our primary responsibility is to protect our children's emotional health and self-esteem. We can no longer expose them to an environment where they are made to feel less than, where their accomplishments are dismissed, and their feelings are disregarded. We have tried to address these issues subtly over the years, but it is now clear that a more direct and permanent solution is necessary. This is not a topic for debate or negotiation. This is our final decision made together as a family. We are choosing to step away to create a peaceful and supportive environment for our children to thrive in. We wish you a peaceful holiday season. Sincerely, Liam and Scarlett. Liam's finger hovered over the send button for a long moment. It was a monumental step, severing ties that had bound him his entire life. He looked at me, a question in his eyes. I just nodded, placing my hand over his. He took a deep breath and clicked. The email was gone. There was no taking it back. A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it almost made me dizzy. The years of anxiety, of bracing for the next hurtful comment, of managing the emotional fallout after every visit, it was over. We had taken control. We knew the response wouldn't be silence this time, and we were right. Less than 10 minutes later, Liam's phone began to ring. The caller ID read, "Mom." We looked at each other and, as we had agreed, he let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it rang again. He silenced it. Then my phone rang. It was Beatrice. I silenced my phone as well. Then came the texts, first to Liam. "Beatrice, Liam, I just received your shocking and incredibly hurtful email. You need to call me immediately. This is a gross overreaction, and Scarlett has clearly twisted things to poison you against your own family. Chloe, Liam, what is wrong with you? Mom is in tears. You've ruined Christmas. Scarlett is a manipulative monster, and you're letting her destroy this family. You need to fix this now. Then they started on me. Beatrice, I see your hand in this, Scarlett. I have done nothing but welcome you into my family, and this is how you repay me. By turning my own son against me, you are a cruel, ungrateful woman. Chloe, I always knew you were jealous of my relationship with my mother. You are tearing this family apart because you can't stand that your children aren't the center of the universe. You are pathetic. The messages were vile, a torrent of accusations and insults. The mask had not just slipped, it had been ripped off, revealing the ugly, snarling faces underneath. Their inability to reflect, to consider for even a second that their own actions had caused this, was all the proof we needed that we had made the right decision. They weren't sad, they were angry that they had lost control. Liam and I sat there, reading the messages aloud to each other, not with hurt, but with a sense of grim vindication. She called you a manipulative monster, I said to Liam with a wry smile. And you're a cruel, ungrateful woman, he replied, shaking his head. They're not even being creative. We didn't respond to any of them. We had said everything we needed to say in the email. Engaging with their tantrum would only fuel the fire. We blocked Beatrice's number and Chloe's number on both of our phones. We blocked them on social media. We created a digital fortress around our family. The finality of it was both terrifying and exhilarating. We were officially on our own, an island. But it was our island, a sanctuary we had built with our own hands. That evening, we told the kids our Christmas plans. We were going to get a real tree and decorate it with all the mismatched, handmade ornaments we wanted. We were going to spend Christmas Eve in our pajamas, watching holiday movies and drinking hot chocolate. On Christmas Day, we would open presents at our own pace, and then go ice skating. Lily's eyes lit up. Can we put my sparkly unicorn ornament right at the top? You can put it wherever you want, sweet. Aye, Liam said, smiling. Noah, in his typically understated way, just looked at us and said, that sounds way better than prime rib. We all laughed. The final invitation we had received from Beatrice and Chloe was an invitation back to a world of judgment and conditional love. The invitation we were accepting was one to a new life, a life where our little family of 4 was enough. It was an invitation to peace, and we had RSVP'd with a resounding yes. Cutting off contact digitally was one thing, maintaining that boundary in the real world was another. Beatrice and Chloe were not the type of people to accept defeat quietly. Their initial barrage of vitriolic texts was just the opening salvo. When their messages were met with a wall of digital silence, they escalated their campaign. They were used to getting the last word, and they were furious that we had taken that power away from them. The just desserts we served them was not a confrontation filled with yelling and dramatic speeches, but the cold, hard, and deeply unsatisfying meal of our complete and total indifference. The first attempt to breach our fortress came a week after we sent the email. It was a Saturday morning. I was in the kitchen with Lily making pancakes, while Liam and Noah were in the garage working on a Pinewood derby car for Noah's scout troop. The doorbell rang. My stomach tightened. We weren't expecting anyone. I glanced through the peephole and my heart sank. It was Beatrice. She was standing on our front porch, holding a beautifully wrapped gift, a serene, practiced look of concern on her face. I took a deep breath and opened the door just a crack, leaving the security chain on. Beatrice, I said, my voice even. Her face broke into a wide, sorrowful smile. Scarlett, dear, I know you're upset, but this has gone on long enough. I brought a little something for Lily. It's an early Christmas present. She held up the gift. It was large and from an expensive-looking toy store, a bribe. We're not accepting gifts, Beatrice, I said calmly. And we are not having this discussion. We said everything we needed to in the email. Her smile faltered. "Don't be ridiculous. You can't be serious about this. You're punishing a grandmother for wanting to spoil her grandchildren." "You weren't spoiling them," I replied, my voice like ice. "You were hurting them. There's a difference. We are not going to debate this with you. Please leave." Her face hardened, the mask of the benevolent grandmother vanishing. "Let me speak to my son," she demanded, her voice rising. "He doesn't want to speak to you," I said. "We are a united front. Now, I'm asking you for the last time to please leave our property." Her eyes blazed with fury. "You will regret this, Scarlett. You are turning my son into a stranger. You are depriving my grandchildren of a family that loves them." "No," I said, my patience gone. "We are protecting our children from a family that doesn't know how to love them properly. Goodbye, Beatrice." I closed the door in her face, my hand trembling slightly but my resolve firm. I leaned against the door, my heart pounding. A few moments later, I heard her car start and speed away. When Liam came in from the garage, I told him what had happened. He wrapped his arms around me. "I'm proud of you," he said, "and I'm sorry you had to be the one to do that." "We're in this together," I reminded him. "Next time it's your turn." Next time came 2 days later. This time it was Chloe, and her approach was different. She showed up at Noah's school during afternoon pickup. I was waiting in the car line when I saw her, standing near the entrance, a bright, fake smile plastered on her face, waving at Noah as he came out of the building. She was trying to ambush him, to get to him without us present. I threw the car in park and jumped out, my blood running cold. I intercepted Noah before he could get to her. "Hey, buddy," I said, putting a protective arm around his shoulders. "Aunt Chloe is here. We're not going to talk to her, okay? We're just going to get in the car." Noah looked from me to his aunt, his face a mixture of confusion and anxiety. He just nodded and let me guide him away. "Scarlett," Chloe called out, hurrying towards us. "Noah, wait, I just want to talk." I didn't turn around. I opened the back door of the car and helped Noah in, buckling his seatbelt. Chloe reached the car just as I was closing the door. "What do you think you're doing?" she hissed, her influencer-perfect face twisted with rage. "You can't keep him from me. I'm his aunt." I faced her, my expression unreadable. "You and your mother forfeited your right to those titles when you decided our children were acceptable casualties in your little game of favorites," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You are not to come to my children's school. You are not to try and contact them. Is that clear? Stay away from my family." I got into the driver's seat, locked the doors, and drove away, leaving her standing in the parking lot, fuming. The final act of their desperate campaign was an attempt to weaponize the rest of the family. A few days before Christmas, Liam got a call from a well-meaning but clueless uncle who had clearly been fed a one-sided story by Beatrice. "Liam, your mother is devastated," the uncle said. "She says Scarlett has forbidden you from seeing the family. You know how much she loves you boys. Whatever this fight is about, it's Christmas. It's time to forgive and forget." This was Liam's turn. I watched as he straightened his back, his face calm and resolute. "Uncle John," he said, his voice firm but respectful. "I appreciate your concern, but you do not have the full story. This is not a fight. This is a permanent decision that Scarlett and I have made to protect our children. It is not up for discussion, and we will not be guilted into changing our minds. I am not being forbidden from doing anything. I am an adult, a husband, and a father, and I am making a choice. My loyalty is to my wife and my children. I need you to respect that." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Liam had never spoken with such authority to his extended family. He ended the call politely but firmly, leaving no room for argument. He had done it. He had severed the final rope. The calls and ambush attempts stopped after that. The message had finally, painfully, been received. They had no power over us anymore. They couldn't manipulate us, couldn't guilt us, couldn't force us back into their toxic orbit. Their feast of drama and control was over, and all that was left for them to consume was the bitter dessert of consequences, served cold in a house that was suddenly very, very quiet. We had won, not by fighting, but by refusing to play the game. Our first Christmas as a family of 4, truly on our own, was unlike any holiday I had ever experienced. It was quiet, it was calm, and it was utterly joyful. The frantic energy that usually surrounded the holidays, the stress of travel, the anxiety of navigating Beatrice's moods, the pressure to perform gratitude for gifts that were always slightly off the mark, was gone. It was replaced by a deep and abiding sense of peace. We woke up on Christmas morning not to an alarm clock, but to the excited whispers of our children. We made our way downstairs to the living room, which was filled with the scent of pine from our gloriously imperfect Christmas tree. It was covered in a chaotic mix of ornaments: Lily's glittery unicorns, Noah's handmade Lego creations, and decades of mismatched baubles that told the story of our lives. At the very top, shining under the lights, was a sparkly unicorn ornament that Lily had proudly placed there herself. We opened presents slowly, taking the time to appreciate each one. There was no audience to perform for, no comparisons to be made. When Noah unwrapped a new programming kit, his face lit up with genuine excitement, and Liam sat on the floor with him for nearly an hour, looking through the manual and planning their first project. When Lily opened a box filled with every color of glitter, paint, and craft supply imaginable, she threw her arms around my neck and yelled, "It's the best present in the whole world." There were no beige sweaters in sight. Later that day, we went ice skating at a local outdoor rink. Liam, who was surprisingly graceful on the ice, taught Noah how to skate backwards. I spent my time shuffling along with Lily, holding her hands as she giggled and wobbled. We were all bundled in hats and scarves, our noses red from the cold, our breath misting in the air. I looked at my family, my husband, my son, my daughter, and my heart felt so full it might burst. This was family. Not the stiff, formal portrait Beatrice tried to paint, but this messy, laughing, living thing. As we drank hot chocolate after skating, my phone buzzed. For a fleeting second, a ghost of the old anxiety fluttered in my stomach. I pulled it out and saw a picture message from an old college friend showing off her own family in matching Christmas pajamas. I smiled and sent one back of us with our hot chocolate mustaches. There were no messages from Beatrice or Chloe. There was no drama, there was only peace. Months passed and our new normal became just normal. The silence from Liam's side of the family was absolute. We heard through the family grapevine that Beatrice had told everyone we were going through a difficult time and that she was giving us our space. A final, face-saving lie to cover the truth of her rejection. We didn't care what she told people. We were too busy living our lives. The change in the children was the most profound evidence that we had done the right thing. Noah's confidence soared. He joined the school's coding club and proudly presented his projects at the science fair without a shadow of a doubt in his own abilities. Lily's NT creative spirit, which had been so close to being dimmed, now shone brighter than ever. Her artwork covered our fridge, a beautiful, chaotic explosion of color and glitter, and every piece was a masterpiece. They were happy. They were secure. They knew, without a single doubt, that they were loved and valued for exactly who they were. One Saturday morning in the spring, I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee and watching the kids play in the backyard. Liam came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my shoulders, resting his chin on my head. "What are you thinking about?" he asked quietly. "I was just thinking about Thanksgiving," I said. "About that horrible, awful day." "I'm so sorry I let it get that far," he said, his voice thick with the memory of his own failure to act sooner. I reached up and squeezed his hand. "Don't be," I said. "In a way, I'm grateful for that day. It was the day we woke up. It was the day we chose our family. It was the day we started our new tradition." He smiled, understanding what I meant. Our new tradition wasn't about pizza on Thanksgiving or ice skating on Christmas. It was a tradition of putting our children first. It was a tradition of unconditional love and unwavering support. It was a tradition of peace. We had lost a part of our extended family, but we had gained our freedom, and in the process, we had saved our own little world. And that was a trade I would make again, 1,000 times over.